Hi there, it's Polly here. Whee! Ah, drinking unicorn juice. So I've returned from my travels. I'm very interested in solo games. I like solo games because they're an interesting sort of subgenre of game design. Often kind of the forgotten orphan of game design. But there's some good minds thinking about it. I picked up a cool one. Now, I couldn't take this when I was traveling for obvious reasons. It's really big. However, Tarawa, 1943. As you can see, it's a big box game. It's very sturdy. Excellent stuff, though. Absolutely excellent. Great game. So, this is a game of storming Tara. This was the first island that was targeted for the American island hopping campaign in World War II. So, the idea was, let's basically forge a path to Japan by jumping from island base to island base to island base. MacArthur, he had a slower strategy, which would have taken at least 18 months longer, where he wanted to do these slow conquests of all these different islands. So it's important because if this is a fail, the USA will rethink its strategy. Island hopping is not going to work. So you'll get a longer war. So it is actually really important. Plus, they're still trying to perfect their techniques and so on. This is the first time for both sides that this has been contested. So what actually happened historically is the Japanese had a plan. They figured we'll stop the Americans on the beach rather than bring them in land and do a long attritional campaign. So that was their initial idea, and the idea was they were actually set up to do these ferocious counterattacks once they got these guys on the beach. And what happened, unfortunately for them, fortunately for us, was the aerial bombardments and naval bombardments actually destroyed their entire communications network, for one thing, so they couldn't coordinate their counterattacks. But also, for some reason, the guy in charge with his entire staff left their bunker to do a personal reconnaissance. Boom! Yes, they turned to flesh confetti. So, in a single hit. So they lost their command structure in one glorious nanosecond. So, yes, it did cause some problems. Now, these are reflected in the game. So, what you've got is this lovely board. So, the board. You are attacking one of the main islands. Tarawa is... yeah, it looks like a pork chop. So, you've got different beach zones on it. I shall fold this in a strange way and show you. So you can see you've got different beach zones. Now, the Americans have counters that represent... you've got a whole division that's attacking. So you've got these split into different Marine regiments, battalions, and the company battle groups that form those regiments and battalions. So when you start off the game, you sit them in outer zones. Essentially, one company up, two companies behind, and that is the start of kind of the genius of this game. It's about resource management. Now, as you fight, your companies will become worn. You've got cohesion. When a unit gets to 0 cohesion and then takes damage, it is gone. Counter is removed, that's it. Ta-ta. What you can do is you can, when it's your turn, you can perform different actions for your units. Now, you can attack into an adjoining area where there are Japanese, and choosing to do that costs you a cohesion automatically. Everyone starts the game off with, I think, about 12. However, Japanese defenses actually do some random damage to everyone before they come in. So your first wave will be damaged. But one of the things you can do is that you can rotate units. You can take the frontline unit out and put a new unit in. And you can then, as actions at later times, you can begin resting and recuperating some of those units. Now, once a unit's cohesion goes below 6 points, when it does actions or goes into combat or whatever, you have to start rolling to see if it becomes exhausted. An exhausted unit can no longer perform attacks and move and so on, and it becomes quite fragile. So you must take care of those human resources. You've got to rotate your units, you've got to rest. But there's a fair bit of ground to cover as you move in. you've got some problems. One of those is bunkers. The Japanese and so on can construct bunkers, which when a unit takes damage, it can actually take it on the bunker. It can remove the bunker rather than removing cohesion and so on. American units can actually dig in as actions that come up later on, but the Japanese certainly have bunkers that spring up, but the Japanese also can infiltrate. So their units can come through even areas where you've got your troops, even if they're like line to line. The Japanese can still usually find a way through, because historically they just had either people hidden in bunkers and silos waiting to come out, or they just at night time would infiltrate in the gaps between companies and so on. And so you've kind of got to start leaving guys behind to guard your rear, to guard important zones and so on. Now, you've got a big deck of tactical cards which give you cool tactics and bonuses and all this kind of cool stuff. And what you do is, when you're starting the game, it's quite a big deck, you take 24 of these. You shuffle random and take 24 of these. Once you've played through all of those cards, the game's over and you check to see how you did. So it does have a finite length, but it's also got very high replayability, because of course you've got different combos of things coming up in those cards. So the next game you play will have a different set of 24. The Japanese kind of generate themselves as the game goes on. You've got lovely components, by the way. So you see you've got a ton of dice, and you've got wooden blocks, and you've got stickers that you put on the wooden blocks to actually make pretty solid playing pieces. But the Japanese have a deck that they're drawing on, and that's actually generating their troops. So the Americans, as they land, you can't see the Japanese. It's just an island that you've been shelling the living daylights out of for the last few days. But there are no formal Japanese units waiting. You have to dig them out and find them. So it's kind of interesting as I've played it. Like, yes, the Japanese defense kind of forms itself, and you begin to say, you're right, here they are. We figure out, okay, I can see what you little schemers are up to. Oh, okay, fair enough. Now you've got reserves, so you can bring in second and even maybe even third waves, depending on how you set things. You might want to come in on side beaches and do an attack in from another area, or you might want to come in behind your initial landings and reinforce it. That's all good. It's got a very interesting combat system. So what you do is you're rolling a bunch of dice. I think it's about 5 dice. 5s and 6s are good. What they do is they remove strength from enemy units. So the Americans roll their dice, but 1s and 2s will be causing damage to the American units, and 4s, you immediately take those dice and discard them. Now, you can either sit with what you've rolled, or you can decide to take some or all of the dice and re-roll them. But to do that, it means you're pressing the attack, you're continuing forward, so it costs you 1 cohesion to do that re-roll. But obviously, if I roll a bunch of dice and I get 1s or 2s, which would cause damage to me, all right, I've got to throw the 4s away. I'm going to pick up the 1s and 2s, and I'm going to re-roll them. I'll spend the cohesion. I was probably going to lose at least that much anyway from these 1s and 2 rolls. So you can keep rolling, but your determination and sometimes your hyperfixation on getting the job done, you can actually wear those units down. You're doing it to yourself by basically being a psycho. Sometimes it might be easier to just do a little bit of damage and sit, rather than wear a unit completely down to a nub in order to wipe out the Japanese. But a really clever little idea. The other thing I really like about this is, yes, it's got rules and it's got the games component. It's also got a historical book with it, a complete rundown of the campaign, how it was planned, naval battles and engagements beforehand, what happened during the shelling, what happened during the attacks, and it goes through it day by day by day. It was like I think it's a 3-day campaign essentially, and so it goes through that day by day, almost hour by hour, and says what actually happened, what the results are, what cool, heroic, and horrible things happened, and what the aftermath was, and then what might have happened had it gone wrong or had things gone differently. So that's a really nice little resource. I like that. Again, designers, thank you very much for putting that in. A fantastic thing. So again, this is a great solo game. This is a neat game of resource management. And there is a delicate balance between storming forward in the fairly limited time that you've got. The pressure is on. You've got 24 cards to basically get through. So you got to move, but pushing too hard can wear you down and leave you vulnerable, and not having reserves, not pitching in second waves into the right areas and so on, that can that can cost you the campaign. So it's damn clever. It's replayable, like I said, because of that large deck of cards, and you're taking a selection from them. A great game. A lot of solo games I'm seeing are siege games, because that's easy. So, like the Box Rebellion game or the Rorke's Drift game that I reviewed. This is the other side. This is, you are one of the assailants of people who are effectively under siege. How are you doing it? And the AI for this is quite clever. It will keep you guessing, and the Japanese will act differently from game to game to game. So you can't just kind of decide each game is going to run the same way, so you repeat the same tactics. It's a nice piece of work. I like it. And I'm looking forward to seeing a lot more from these designers. It's a great piece of work. So anyway, Tarawa, 1943. Excellent stuff. I will give you all the links to find these things online. If you like the reviews, by all means, hit the like button, subscribe, find me on Patreon, sing my praises, carve statues, whatever suits you. I will see you guys in the new year, and I hope everyone has a great holiday. Look after yourselves, and cheers.